Hello, this is a GKCOA in Kansas City, Missouri lineup wheel and lineup card instruction video. This is not meant to be a comprehensive, this is how it must be done. This is how I have used these implements in my own officiating. I'm not a lineup wheel user, which is what you see in front of you, but I have used it in the past in my first couple of seasons of officiating, so I will walk you through the basics there. I'm sure there are some more tweaks and tricks and things that people who use that on a regular basis would be able to teach you. But this is just a basic overview. And then I will show you how to use the lineup card that I have created. And this one is very detailed. It has all the information you would ever want. And then I will break it down even further and show you how you can use just a basic 3x5 index card to do the same things. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with this lineup wheel. As you can see, it is blank. I've got this yellow card, not because of anything. That's to let me know where the camera's in focus. So just ignore that if you would. So as you can see, we have the lineup wheel here. It's got two sides, and when you leave it open like this, it's very easy to see where the net would be. It would be down the center seam. And what I like to do is make sure that I'm facing the court as I write the team names at the top so that I don't get confused. There have been a few times where I've been facing the wrong direction, or I've been facing the table where my lineups are, and I've written them on the wrong side, and that just gets me confused throughout the whole set. So I really try to make sure that I have the teams written on the correct side. So we're going to start with a team A. Sorry about my hand here. And a team B. And team A has serve. So you're going to mark first serve. And hopefully you would have more than one of these lineup cards. I'm using a wet erase marker just for demonstration purposes. When I use these, I did use a pencil, but I only had one lineup card, and I found that it was very cumbersome to have to scramble to erase everything in between each set. So if you are going to use a lineup wheel, I either suggest getting more than one or using a very erasable implement, probably not a dry erase marker, but this wet erase marker, and then you can just carry a baby wipe or something in your roughing bag to erase in between sets if you need to. But again, I suggest having multiple, at least 5 of these, because if you're a down ref on a varsity match, then you're going to have up to 5 sets. I know that's an investment, but if that's what you're choosing to do, then I think that's a very good idea. So you're not scrambling in between sets to have to go and erase all these things. So let's go ahead and mark down our lineups. As you can see, the team on the left is serving, and so I have the number 1 in the serving position, the right back. Let's talk about these cards just for a second. The black on these I like because I am a visual learner. The black has your back row players. If this is the net, this is your left front, right back, center back, left back. And so it makes it really clear where your players are supposed to be, who's your back row, who is your front row. And so I do like the lineup wheel for that aspect because it's great for visual learners. And I think for new people who haven't quite figured out the serving or the serve receive rotations and that sort of thing, it really helps to just line things up so that you can see if your players are out of rotation. Up here at the top, we've also got our substitutions. We'll get to some of those here shortly. And these lines I like. Actually, I'm not even sure what these lines, what the Y and the R stands for. That is something I didn't even notice until just now. You could use that space to write your libero, because I have noticed that these cards don't have a space for your libero. that just threw me for a loop there for a second. Sorry about that. And then at the top, we also have a place for timeouts. You can just check those off. You'll see in a few moments that I actually like to write down the score at the time of the timeouts so that that's just how I keep track of timeouts. But here on the substitutions, when we get to 15, 16, 17, and 18 subs, then we need to notify the coach that they're nearing their maximum sub limit. And so we want to make sure that we don't go over that 18 or else that's going to cause some penalties. So I do have my starters lined up here. I have my first server on the serving side in the right back position. Over here on the receiving side, I have my first server up here in the right front because they will rotate when they get a side out and they get the ball back. So I'm going to start writing my lineup for Team A, and I write my starters as the arrow is indicating inside of the smaller circle. The outer circle is going to be for your substitutes. So I'll go ahead and write those down. That might be off camera so you don't have my giant hand in your view. So if you want to do this along with me, the first server for Team A is going to be number 1. Number 11 is in the 2 position. 21 is in the 3rd. 24 is the captain, and you do want to mark that on there because that's something you'll want to communicate with your R1. 24 is the captain. 7 and then 16 is in the 6th position. So, and you'll notice that when you rotate this, that those are going to look a little funky. 24, that is a C up there. It's kind of hard to see because I'm using a thicker pen than a pencil, which is what I would usually be using. But as you get used to it, you'll get used to seeing your own handwriting upside down or sideways or whatever. So you'll be able to read these numbers even as you rotate the wheel around. So that's Team A. I'm going to write down Team B next, starting in the number 1 position up here. I have 17, if you're doing this with me. 18, sorry, I can't read my own writing. Number 6 is in the 4 position. 13 is the captain. And 7 is, excuse me, in the right back position. Our libros on the A side, sorry, there is the B side lineup. So you can write that down. And feel free to pause or rewind or anything if I say something weird or if you miss something. Just go back and rewind it. Pause if you need to see something. That's totally fine. It's YouTube, so do the things that you know to do there. And then I like to write down my libro. I usually just write that on the top line if I'm going to be doing that here. So our libro for side B is number 11. And I'll make an L to indicate the libro, just like that. And then I actually didn't write down the libro for the other team this is actually from a match that I worked last week. So let me make up a number that's not already being used. The libro is going to be number 3. And one thing to be careful of if you are using a wet erase pen like this is to make sure to let it have a chance to dry before you stick it in your pocket or put your hand on it, because it will smear and that'll make it a lot harder to read throughout the match. So just be aware of that. All right, so once we're set up here, I usually wait until about the 2-minute mark before a match or a set starts to make sure that the coaches haven't made any changes. That's just my preference, because they do have up until that 2-minute mark to make a substitution, to make a change, or if a player gets injured during the warm-ups or something, they can switch them out without a penalty. So I like to make sure that we have the final lineup. I know the scorekeeper and the libero tracker may have already written them down as soon as they handed it to them. But I like to wait until that point so that I don't have to make changes on my lineup card. So, but at this point, we should be ready for the match to start. And so what I do, I fold it. Okay, so because Team A has the serve, I will go out on I won't go on the court. I will go up to the sideline and I will check my receiving team first, just because it's systematic for me. I'm very systematic in most of the things that I do. So I always check the receiving side. I don't know if that's in the rule book. I can't remember. So that might be why I do it that way. But I always check the receiving side first. Even if the serving side is already lined up and the receiving side is still at their bench, I always do the receiving side first. So we see that number 17, I always confirm that she's in the correct position. And then we just go around. Number 8 should be in the middle. 18 is nearest to me. Number 6 is nearest to me in the back row. 13 and then 7. And I visually confirm that those numbers are on their jerseys, because sometimes their back might be to you, or they might have long hair that's covering up their number on the back or something. I will ask them to turn so that I can see their number visually, because I've had instances where I've just assumed that that's the number, and that causes big problems once we start getting into serve. So I don't like to take away points. I don't like to have to deal with that stuff in the middle of the match. So I like to fix it as soon as possible. And then, I have my C here by number 13. So I will look at my R1. I will indicate that 13 is the captain. I will ask her to wave at the R1 if she hasn't when I indicated that. And then I will move to my serving side. So number 1 should be back behind the inline by that point, hopefully, ready to serve. Number 11 should be nearest me in the front. 21 is in the middle. 24 is also my captain. And I go ahead and confirm all of the players are in their proper positions before I indicate my captains. That's always the last thing that I do. Number 7 is farthest from me in the back row, and 16 is in the middle. And then I will tell my R1 again, number 24 is captain. I'll have her wave at the R1 and we'll move on. One thing that I did forget to do over here on the receiving side was to let my libero go in. So if she is standing there on the sideline, I will indicate to her to enter the court, which hopefully you know that by now. And if I see who she goes in for, I'll turn and tell my table really quickly and say, Libra's going in for number 7 or something like that, which is who she's going to go in for on this simulation. And so I would go ahead and tell my table that, and if they weren't paying attention or if they were paying attention. Okay, and then over here, I would do the same thing. Once I've checked everybody, I have indicated my captain, then I will motion for the libero to step onto the court if she is prepared to do that. And then I will go back to the table. I will roll the ball to the first server, who is going to be number 1 here on side A. And then if the table's ready and I'm ready and my line judges are ready, I will indicate that with a flat hand up to the R1. I guess that's the best way to describe that. Or a vertical hand, I guess, towards the R1. It's the giving the court back signal. So, all right, we are ready to start here. So number 1 is going to be my first server. So as the R2, it is my responsibility to make sure that the receiving team is in the proper positions for serve receive. So what I like to do, and this might be controversial, but this is what I do. I find this the easiest. And, like I said, this might be controversial. I like to know who my back row players are, because the front row players can do anything. They can block. They can hit in front of the 10-foot line. They can hit the ball from anywhere on the court, basically. And so it's the back row players that have restrictions. And in particular, the libero has restrictions. So and she's the easiest one to pick out because she is in a different colored jersey. So I find that the easiest to keep track of. So when I am on the receiving side, I will look and see who is or who was my last server. And in this case, she didn't actually serve because they're going to rotate. But I would see that number 7, number 13, and number 6, or like I said, the Libero went in for number 7. So I would say Libero, 13, and 6. You know, when the Libero goes in, I do not mark anything on my card. I used to do that on my index cards. I've found that I don't really need to do that. If I've trained my table well and I've gone over this with my Libero tracker, then I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to trust that my Libero tracker is doing a good job, and it's pretty obvious to see that the Libero is in the back row and what position she should be in. I can rule out quickly using, mental deductions to figure out that my Libero is in for number 7 because 13 and 6 are also there. And all the other players are standing up at the net for serve receive or in some sort of configuration like that. And so I'm looking at the back row. So I'm looking to make sure that these players are all not overlapping. And then my front row, if I have a chance to glance at them, I want to make sure that they are stacked correctly in the correct order. So I would want 18 to be closest to me, 8, and then 17. I'm going to be honest, I don't always double check the front row. Usually one of these players is going to be pulled back to help receive because my setter is going to be pushing up on one of these sides, which I think is number 6. Yes, I think is number 6 in this case. So she would be pushing 18 up to the net so that number 6 can get over to the serving position. And so 17 was most likely the one that was back receiving for the first pass. So I just make sure that number 17, who I know is a front row player, is in front of 7 and 13, especially number 7, because she is her corresponding back row player. She can't be completely behind that player. Anyway, that's the overlap portion of it, but that's kind of how I use this to determine that. And so I'm looking at these 3 players to make sure that they're in order. I'm making sure that my front row player does not get behind my back row player. And also I'm watching my setter. If she's pushing up number 18 here, sorry for my giant fingers there. I'm making sure that number 6 is not in front of number 18. Like she's not closer to the net than number 18 is, because then that would make her out of rotation as well. All right, so let's say number 1 serves over here. She gets a couple of points. I don't have to do anything. Finally, she hits one in the net. So that means that my first server over here, they get a side out, is going to be number 17. So all I do is I pivot this card like this. And during the match, okay, so it's not going to be laid out flat because that doesn't fit well in the pockets on my pants. So I'm going to fold it here at the net. And this is what I'm going to be looking at. So I know I have this fold here, and I even put it in my pocket in a certain way so that when I pull it out, I see the receiving team. I keep my card in my left pocket because I'm right-handed, so that when I need to write, I have my writing utensil in my right hand. And then when I pull it out, I always have the receiving team facing me. So here in a second, when number 17 serves in the first position here, then I would flip my card over to check my receiving team. Sorry for the glare. I would flip my card over to show the receiving side is going to be number 1, who just served, number 16, and number 7. And I think the Libero may have come in for one of these 2 players. I don't remember this particular match, but she doesn't serve in that position, so we'll get to that. So I'm going to make sure that these players are in correct position. Just like I mentioned on the other side on the receiving team, we're going to have number 1 probably pushing up. I think she was the setter. Yes. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Number 1 was the setter. She's pushing up. Number 11 at the net. Number 16's receiving. Number 7. And then 24 gets pulled back to help receive. So, so I just want to make sure that 7 and 24 don't overlap. I want to make sure that 7 and 16 don't overlap. And another big one would be 16 and 1. If 16 gets too far back into this right back corner, then she might be overlapped with number 1, who's up at the net, depending on where number 1 is standing. I want to make sure that number 1 is, or number 11 is closer to the net than number 1. And so those are our probably biggest issues there for that. Okay, so when I put this in my pocket, and some people hold their lineup cards. When I was doing this for my first couple of years, yes, I did hold my lineup, especially my index card, in my hand. And I think I even held my lineup wheel in my hand. It's not ideal, of course. We don't want to see that when you're doing varsity. So you definitely want to be at a point where you don't have to hold it at all times. You can put it in your pocket and focus really on the match at hand. But then pull it out on dead balls or when they have a change of serve or a side out or anything like that. But when I would put it in my pocket, I would put it in my pocket this way because they're receiving. And when I pull it out, I want to be able to see, who are my back row players on my receiving side, because that's the side that I'm supposed to be watching as the R2. One nice thing about the wheel is that there's nothing to write down when there's a side out. All you have to do is rotate your little wheel. And that's kind of nice. This one is brand new. I've never used it before. So the hinges and the wheel, the brad or whatever grommet that is really tight. So it does not spin on me at all. I have to really manipulate it to move it. And the more you use them, I believe they do become looser. And so you want to have, just have that in mind as you're putting it in your pocket or as you're messing with it and whatnot. Just have multiple wheels if you can afford it. It is an investment and I understand that, but it's worth it to be able to have something that is reliable and dependable. All right. So they are receiving, we have a couple points from number 17 who's serving on the other side, and then they get a side out. So I'm just going to rotate this around. Here are my big giant fingers again. And number 11 is getting ready to serve, but she only plays in the front row. So we're going to have a substitution. We're going to sub in number 9 for number 11. So when that happens, of course, as an R2, you're going to whistle it. You're going to send them in. What I like to do is talk to my table beforehand, first of all, see if they need me to read the things out loud. If they do need that, then great. I'm going to do that because it helps me to remember the numbers, because I go ahead and send the girls onto the court and then I write it down. Even if I have multiple substitutes on a side, I usually try to remember both pairs of numbers or however many I have. Hopefully it's not more than 2, although sometimes that does happen. So when I have a substitute, you can see here on the card it says substitutes go on the outside area. So I had 9 substitute in for number 11. So I'm just going to write a 9 there. I do not cross off number 11. You can do what you want there. I do not cross off number 11 so that I don't have to write these down all the time. So here's number 9. She's going back to serve, so I'm going to, and we also need to mark down our substitutes. I'll talk more about this when I get to the card, but I just make a little slash over the first substitution. And then I flip my card over because I'm going to be standing on the receiving side. I need to know who is my back row and who is my front row too, to make sure that my players are in alignment with each other. All right, so number 9 serves. We have a couple serves. They have, let's say they had 5 serves in a row. They shanked all of them. The coach wants to call a timeout. So what I do as the R2, I'm going to whistle the timeout, and then I'm going to come over here and mark a timeout on this side because it was team B. And I'm going to look up and see what the score is. I've lost track already, so I'm just going to make something up here. Let's say that they are behind 8-3. So what I'm going to do is write the score, and we always write the receiving, or the team that called timeout. Forget the receiving. The team that called timeout, we always list their score first. So they had 3. The serving team has 8. So I'm going to write 3-8 up here. And then I'm going to confirm that the scorekeeper has the same score that's up on the scoreboard, and that you're actually supposed to count the points in the scorebook. I'm gonna be honest, I don't do that anymore. I used to. I don't. It takes a lot of time, and sometimes there's just not enough time to, like when it's 24, 23 or something, there's not enough time to do that. Yeah, don't tell on me. So, that is what I do. If there has been a problem, or if there's a question, or I feel like I need to, I might go back to the last timeout and see what the score was, because I should have confirmed the score at that timeout, and then count the points actually written down in the book since then. I always do check the running score in the middle to make sure that it has the correct score, 3-8. And I feel like that's enough for me. That may not be the case for everybody. So do what, of course, first do what is in the rule book, and then second, do what is best for you. But sometimes I feel like there's a lot going on during timeouts, or maybe I have to confirm, substitutes, or if there's a mess or something on the floor or anything like that. Sometimes you have to deal with other things and you don't get to count the individual points. I trust my scorekeepers, and I talk to them before the match starts, and I let them know, if there's any discrepancy, any problem, please let me know as soon as possible so we can pause the match and just move on. Anyway, that was a big side note. Let's move on here. The timeout's over. 1 minute has passed. Okay, so so that's where I write my first timeout. We're gonna move on. The timeout froze the server, so they got a side out. So we're gonna rotate over here on our right, and number 8 is supposed to be the server, and we're gonna have 15 sub in for her. Number 8's also a front row player, so 15's going to sub in for 8. We're just going to write in 15 in my substitutions. There we go. 15 serves the ball. I'm standing on the receiving side, making sure that now I have number 9 in the nearest position. Number 1 is my setter, so she's probably going to be pushing up number 24 in the middle. And then 16... Yes. I don't remember if 16 was out for the libero or not. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm just confirming that these players are in the right positions here. And again, the back row players are in the black, which is great. So anyway, I hope you're getting this. I'm going to do a couple more here because we do have a libero coming up, and I'll show you what I do for that. And then I will probably call the lineup wheel good. I don't want to belabor this, and I want to get to the other ones, and this video is already getting kind of long. So I will do 1 or 2 more to show you what I do when I have the libero serving. And then we will move on to the other methods of lineup tracking. So these guys are receiving. Team A is receiving. Sorry, they're ladies because it's women's volleyball. So these ladies are receiving over here. I am checking for all the overlaps. They get the side out, and we're going to have 21 come back. And actually, okay, so yes, 16 was out for the libero. Libero came in for 16, let's put it that way. Because now the libero is going back to serve. And as you probably already know, the libero can serve 1 time in the rotation. And so 16 was out. Now she comes back in for the front row, and 21 is going out. The libero is going to stay on the court. So that's that double Libero exchange that looks kind of funky when you see it the first couple of times. But now we have the Libero back, excuse me, to serve in position 3 for number 21. And anytime we have the Libero serve on the score sheet, we have to draw a triangle in that position because that indicates that that is the only position that the Libero can serve in. So what I like to do is just draw a triangle around that position as well. So I'm going to do that around the 3, the little 3 that's already pre-printed. Excuse me, it's early and I haven't talked much today, so I have to keep clearing my throat. I do have some water here. I'm going to take a quick drink. Excuse me. All right, that's better. Okay, and so that just indicates that my Libero is serving. It's not a substitution, so I'm not going to put anything down here in the substitutes area. I just put a triangle around that 3 so that I know that that's where my Libero is serving for this team. There's nothing else that you have to do here. Like I said, number 16 came back in. I don't mark anything for that because I don't track where my Liberos are at all times. Just because they can come in for different players for maybe a rally and then go back out. So I don't mess with writing down every single time she comes in and out. So Libero serving, we're going to look over here at our receiving side. Everything looks fine and dandy here. So I'm just making sure that I have 15, 17, and 7 in the right positions, and then I will glance at 18, 6, and 13 in the front row to make sure that they're all in the correct position. And I believe that actually, oh, no, that doesn't happen yet. 7, the Libero is out or in for number 7 here. She is actually the last server the Libero is going to serve in the number 6 position. We might get to that. So anyway, we're going to have a side out again. Team B gets the serve. Number 18 gets to serve. We'll go back to the receiving side. So now my Libero is in the back. And again, the reason I like to track my back row players is because the Libero is an obvious player. Many times my setter is also going to be in the back row because she's going to be that number 1 in this case, who's pushing number 16 up to the net. So that's pretty easy for me to remember because I'm always trying to track my setters. That's something that I do, and hopefully you're starting to catch on to that as well. I find that helps me to know whether my setter is front or back row. And it also, because, okay, now we're getting into some other stuff. I didn't mark my sub on side B. Oops. I hope you caught that. I didn't mark that sub. Okay. Sorry about that. So I'm just marked out number 1 for when 15 came in for 8. Oops. I missed that. Sorry. Rabbit trail. Okay. So what I was saying was this is kind of your philosophy of officiating. What I have found most often is if a back row player is going to be caught in a back row block or a back row attack in front of the 10-foot line, it's most often, in my experience, going to be the setter. So I like to track my setters, especially when I know that they are back row. And I have a little gimmick to help me with that too before every service, especially as an R1. I either put my pinky out to show that she's back row, or I put my thumb out on each side to show that she's in the front row. So if she's in the back row like she is here as an R1, I would put my pinky out on Team A's side. And, oh shoot, I don't even know who it is over here. I think it might be 17. No, I think it was 6. I think 6 was the setter because she's... No, it would probably be 17. Yeah, I'm sorry. This was a JV match from Tuesday night, and we had 4 matches that night, so everything's kind of blurring together. But 17, I think, was my server. So I would put my pinky out on Team B's side to help me remember that as an R1, not as an R2, because I have my card here that I'm able to reference pretty easily. Okay, so all that aside, let's get back to actually doing the instruction here. So they have been receiving, they get the serve back. Here's number 24. 24 is my captain. Yeah. Okay, so 24 serves. Sorry, I was trying to figure out at what point do we need to continue this. I think we're doing pretty good here. I am going to have a couple more substitutions. I think the lineup wheel is very self-explanatory on that. The only thing is when I have a player substitute back in. So like number 11 here, if we rotated one more time, I would have 11 coming back in to play the front row. So what I would do is I would just turn my wheel, and I'm not going to cross out number 9 because this is the only position that number 9 can substitute in. So I'm not going to cross it out or anything. I'm just going to leave it, but I'm going to know that these two girls have substituted back in for each other. 11 is back in on the front row. So I hope that's pretty self-explanatory. You know, we have timeouts up here. I could keep going and pretend that one of the teams called timeout again and do the second timeout or whatever. I think you get the idea. So the wheel is very good for visual people. Like I said, I used this my first couple of years, and I didn't have any trouble with it except that I only purchased one, and so I did have that scrambling problem. So I don't recommend buying just one. I do recommend that you have multiple, especially if you're planning to get up into the varsity level officiating, that you buy 5 because some of those sets or some of those matches will go 5. All right. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. I'm going to post this to YouTube, and then or you can email me at Lindsay, Lindsey, Fernicle Patterson, Patterson at yahoo.com. Again, that's Lindsay in Patterson at yahoo.com. I'll put that in the description box below. And if you have questions about this lineup wheel, please email them to me or comment down below. I'm going to end this video because it's getting pretty long. So I'm going to end this and start a new one that I will post as well on the lineup card. And I'll just jump right in there without all the explanation and stuff. So anyway, keep your eyes posted for that video as well. I'll send a link to both of them to our new officials in GKCOA. Thanks for listening.